This presentation will make a case for why a science of history is valuable and important. Let's begin with what is history? An early form of history began with the recording of events, such as births, deaths, wars, and ascension of leaders. Initially, this recording was in the form of remembered oral histories, repeated from generation to generation. Engaging storytelling became an important aspect of history, both to make the tales more easily remembered and better worth remembering. Would a repeater of history embellish or spice up the tale, get a few wows or gasps from their audience? Or perhaps fill in the gaps with their own speculation? Would you? As writing developed, some of this oral history was transcribed into written works. The role of storytelling history was expanded to include great literary sagas. Writing a story encourages written analysis and reflection upon what were the causes of events in history, such as why were wars won or lost, or why were there floods or plagues. As civilization developed, there came a role for professional historians. Initially, these public historians worked for rulers and states. Though by necessity, their perspective of such histories pandered to their sponsors, those histories nevertheless contained some elements of truth. Further, historians of later periods often had more freedom to reanalyze, interpret, and debate far past historical events according to their own perspectives, allowing for greater critical analysis and the development of a more academic field of history as one of the humanities. The formation of universities containing communities of historians and students accelerated the development of history as a maturing academic discipline. Then telescopes were invented, and that changed everything. The roots of science existed in ancient times, but early research was empirical and depended upon logic and philosophy as much as it was anything else. It was applied to observation. Any experimentation was typically unscientific. This paradigm continued well into the Renaissance. For example, the work of Nicholas Copernicus and Tycho Brahe were based upon observations. This changed dramatically in the 1600s. Galileo Galilei tested the ancient mechanical theories of Aristotle by conducting rigorous experiments upon following and accelerating objects. Then Galileo shook up astronomy by turning the newly invented telescope upon the night skies. He discovered that Mercury and Venus have phases, just as the moon does, and that Jupiter has its own orbiting moons. If Galileo's telescopic discoveries were the earthquake that shook the foundations of the old way of thinking about the world and the heavens, Isaac Newton's theories that unified the mechanics of heavens and earth together into a single framework were the explosion that finally blew the old ideas apart. Science, as a credible and dominant paradigm, was born. New discoveries came rapidly. Not only did it become known that the Earth circled the Sun, but that the Sun itself was part of a galaxy that was part of an unimaginably large universe. As you can imagine, this had some implications for history. Written language was invented roughly 6,000 years ago. That is also the length of religious histories, which led to the interpretation that the Earth and the universe are about 6,000 years old. With astronomy providing strong evidence that the universe is over 14 billion years old, there is an obvious discrepancy. For history as a written humanity, a 6,000-year span is quite sufficient. Anything older than that might get bumped into archaeology or anthropology. Supernatural events are not in their essence problematic either. The occurrence of alleged supernatural events can be part of the written record, just as in any other event. The assertions of the existence of supernatural events are themselves historical events. In contrast, a science of history needs to be integrated into the larger and longer scientific story of the formation of the universe and the emergence of life and intelligence. Any inconsistencies of asserted human history with the larger framework of the physical and biological sciences needs to be noted and reconciled. Speaking of the biological sciences, Charles Darwin's theory of biological evolution, that humans emerge from less cognitive species, bridges an important gap between the emergence of planets such as the Earth and the development of life and civilization on them. Much of the context for human history within the larger physical picture have been established by anthropology and archaeology. Although Newtonian mechanics revolutionized the physical sciences, It is not particularly useful or well suited for the analysis of human history. Although it might be useful for analyzing how much physical damage a weapon might cause, it does not answer such questions such as why was a weapon used or how likely was it to be used. What really has the potential to revolutionize the science of history is the development of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is the language of life. Eating, breathing, working. These are all processes described and constrained by thermodynamics. Some of the most recent work on thermodynamics provides a truly revolutionary breakthrough that can enable a science of history similar to that of the physical sciences. Just as gravity is a force that unifies physical mechanics on Earth and in the rest of the universe, new principles of thermodynamics show how the tendencies of nature actually favor the emergence of life, intelligence, and civilization. It allows for the scientific analysis of the progression of historical processes. It allows us to compare historical processes of civilizations with each other, whether on Earth or all the way across the universe. Just as physics has not replaced chemistry or biology, a science of history cannot replace the value of history as a humanity. There is a lot of important stuff that happens in a society and in human brains that is impractical to describe physically in a way that truly captures its meaning and importance. Further, we all enjoy a good story and are much more likely to read one and find personal meaning in it. History as a humanity tells a story of history, and as long as we are humans, nothing will replace that. History as a science and one of the humanities are two complementary approaches. There is another reason to develop a science of society. There is much talk about improving equity and creating a sustainable civilization. However, often government and other policies are rather short-sighted. Even if they attempt to focus on the long run, things often go astray within several years. The truth is, we really don't know how our society works in the long run. Intuition is often good enough to govern in a reactive manner, yet if we don't really know how the processes of human history work, then long-term endeavors in government potentially contain fatal defects. It is said that if one doesn't know where they're going, one will end up somewhere else. A well-developed and validated science of history could go a long way toward figuring out where we are going and creating the type of society we want, or at least one that is as close as is physically and socially possible. For further information, please go to history.org, spelled H1ST0RY.org.